All right, welcome to another episode of Spizz, your source for principled family chiropractic care. My name is Dr. Ryan Betts, and I am very excited to go into today's topic on pediatrics, so children and chiropractic care. Something really close to my heart, not only for my life, but also for the life of my children and a lot of the families that we take care of here at Radix Chiropractic. For many parents, when I meet somebody new and they see that a lot of kids are being adjusted here at the office, the first question that comes to mind is a little bit of shock, not realizing that chiropractic care is safe and gentle for children, when in fact, chiropractic is one of the best things you could ever do for your child, especially as a newborn. So we're going to go through the different stages of life over the next few videos, and I'll highlight some of the importances of being adjusted as a child grows up and what that does for their body. So first of all, just a little bit about myself and how I even got into chiropractic. Pediatric care was my journey and my introduction to becoming a chiropractor. As a young child, my body suffered through a lot of issues with bedwetting, as well as a lot of headache issues and even sports-induced asthma when I got a little bit older. It was around the age of 7 that my parents were beginning to notice, like, hey, Ryan is not seeing any letdown in the number of wet beds that I would have every night. At least one, if not 2 or 3 times a night, I would wet the bed. Even at 7.5 years of age, this was going on. And we tried a lot of different things. I mean, they tried sleep studies, they tried different medications, sleep-wake methods to just try to get me up in the middle of the night to break the cycle. And, nothing really seemed to work. And it was just by the grace of God that at that point in my life, my uncle was going to Palmer College of Chiropractic and was about to graduate and was very passionate and on fire about chiropractic and shared with my parents the importance of a child being adjusted and what that could do. And of course, he knew my story. He knew what I was going through. I mean, it was very tough as a young kid, entering even elementary school and, going to friends' houses and having sleepovers. And, it was just really embarrassing. Thankfully, none of my friends ever really knew about it until they watched this video now. But the reality is, I dealt with a lot of emotional trauma from this as well, and a lot of embarrassment. So my uncle kind of saw that going on and shared with my parents to, why don't you try taking Ryan to a chiropractor? And as I see with many kids that come to this office, it's kind of the last resort. We tried everything else, exhausted every other avenue. And so what happened was at around 8 years of age, went to my first chiropractic appointment, got some films on my spine, especially my lower back. And I think I've mentioned this in one of the other videos, but I wanted to reiterate that in the lower back, I had what was called a vertebral subluxation, which is when a vertebrae of the spine goes out of alignment in comparison with the bone above and below it. And that subluxated bone in my low back at L4 was compressing that delicate nerve fiber that was exiting the spine and going to my urinary bladder. And as a result of this, my body was lacking proper growth and development of my bladder, but also proper control and regulation of bladder functions. Thus, years of suffering with wetting the bed that I should not have gone through had that subluxation not developed. So we began chiropractic care a few months in, started to see a reduction in the number of nights that I was wetting the bed. And eventually, after about, it's a little hazy to me right now, it's around 6 to 9 months that I was being adjusted. I completely had forgotten that I even wet the bed. That's how drastic of an improvement it made. So not only did chiropractic give my body back the power and the ability to heal itself and begin regulating itself again, but also in that process, in that journey, we had the bedwetting as our primary goal, of course. But as a result of being adjusted, I also saw that I was able to get off all of my medications that I was taking, not only for bedwetting, but I had also gotten off of all the headache issues and all the sports-induced asthma. I even had an inhaler that I never had to use after that. We kept it around for, just in case. But as a young kid, I was in elementary school at this point, and being able to see, like, wow, my body knows how to heal itself. it just cured all of this stuff, or just, my body just healed itself of all these things when all the medication, all the other stuff we were doing didn't even phase it. So it was at a young age. I remember in middle school doing school reports of what you want to be when you grow up. And I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor because literally chiropractic gave me my life back. It gave me back my purpose, and it gave me now a passion and a bigger purpose to help others. So I've been on a mission ever since then to really just put myself out there in conversations that are sometimes uncomfortable with parents, conversations about getting kids adjusted, getting their children checked at birth as soon as the baby's born. Because again, it goes against status quo. It's not a normal conversation to have. But knowing what it did for my life, I'd be doing somebody a disservice if I didn't share that. So I just wanted to let you a little bit of insight into where I come from. And with both of my beautiful children so far, they've both been adjusted since the moment they were born. A few hours after birth, both my son Tate and my daughter Faith were adjusted, and hundreds of other children that we've seen at this office. And I'm kind of on a high right now because a mom we've been taking care of for the past 4 or 5 months now just gave birth at the birth center here in town a few days ago, and just brought her newborn baby Cambria into the office and got to give her first chiropractic adjustment, 2-3 days old now. So such an amazing experience. But so let's talk about what the adjustment looks like, because first of all, a pediatric, especially a newborn adjustment, is nothing like an adult adjustment. An adult adjustment, you're going to hear some of the popping noises, some of the, releases that are very normal and very healthy for the spine. But for a newborn and an infant and even up to a toddler, we don't do the technique that I utilize. We don't do what's called an osseous adjustment, meaning it's not a bone adjustment. We're working with the structures around the spine, like the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles, to release the tension in them to allow the body to then self-correct the subluxated vertebrae. So in talking about the subluxations, let's just go through some of the common subluxations in a newborn just from the birth process. So studies show that over 80% of children now are born with at least one vertebral subluxation in their spine just from descending down the birth canal. And the most common subluxation is to the atlas bone, which is the very top bone of the spine. It's the bone that the skull sits upon. So for those of you who have experienced childbirth or seen childbirth, you know that as the baby, if it's baby's properly presenting, is going to come down the birth canal, and the first thing that needs to come out is the shoulders. Well, a lot of stress is placed on the skull and on that top area of the neck as the baby is descending down the canal. And that force can cause a lot of pressure on that atlas bone and cause it to subluxate either right or left, even backwards and forwards. So that is a prime area that I'm checking, because when a baby is born with a subluxation to atlas, it's affecting the brainstem, it's affecting the digestive control centers, the immune system, cardiovascular and respiratory health. So a very key area that we see resolve a lot of issues and prevent a lot of issues in children. The other area that commonly subluxates is the sacrum bone, which is the middle bone of the pelvis, specifically kind of the tailbone area. Again, just think baby descending down birth canal. What are the two widest structures coming out? We got neck, we got shoulders, and we got hips, right? So the top and the bottom are where the most common subluxations are at from the birth process. And the two key areas that we evaluate a newborn for and bring about the gentle correction of. So a little bit about how do we correct a subluxation in a newborn. It's about 4 ounces of pressure that I use my pinky on the ligaments in those areas and the tendons to begin releasing the subluxation. So if you wonder how much is 4 ounces, if you basically take the fleshy part of your hand and put pressure on there enough to make a dimple in the skin, that's about 4 ounces of pressure. That's the amount that we have to apply. So it's a very delicate, very gentle application of a very specific force on the spine to begin releasing and correcting that subluxation. And what we do is we find the area that needs to be adjusted, and I place my pinky on that area and just hold it for about 10 to 15 seconds. And the body will release, and the body will begin adjusting that segment and put it in proper motion. And what we see from even the first newborn adjustment, like I'll be excited to see baby Cambria next week to see how her body responded, because instantly parents will see greater improvements in sleep. I mean, an adjustment helps to calm down the nerve system. So that baby is going to get just honestly a very deep, great quality of sleep. I've had babies on the table with colic or with constipation or digestive issues that almost clear up instantly. To the extent there's even been some children who've been brought into me that we get them evaluated, adjust their subluxations, and that have been constipated, and they go to the bathroom right there in their diaper. It's amazing to see how quick of a response it is for a newborn when they're getting adjusted. But yeah, those are the common areas that we begin looking at, and then eventually just get them more to a wellness state once we get them corrected and just maintain that correction with regular wellness chiropractic care, which for most children is roughly a week to maybe an every other week adjustment or a check of their spine to see if they're subluxated. So neat study that I came across from OSHA is that they estimate that in the first, by the time a child turns 11 years old, they're going to have about 7,000 spinal traumas to their body. So I want to go through a little bit now. We just talked about birth. Let's go to the next stage, that toddler stage, that exploration stage of a child when they're greatly exploring their environment. My daughter is in the midst of that right now. She's a little over a year and a half old, and she's climbing up everything, and unfortunately she's taken some falls. So when I saw that study, I'm like, yeah, it's probably not too far from the truth that by age 11 about 7,000 spinal traumas. And a trauma is any type of abnormal force to the spine or abnormal stress. So a lot of these are when a child is becoming more mobile and they're learning to walk, they fall a lot, right? And we see the classic example: a child will pull themselves up, maybe hold onto the table or onto mom or dad's leg, and then they fall straight back right on their bum. And that force on the pelvis sends stress straight up the spine and can cause subluxation with each of those impacts. So, kids begin learning how to walk, and then once they become, more of a toddler age, like my daughter, they begin learning how to climb. That's the next stage of development, is going from crawling to walking to climbing. But when you climb and go to higher heights, you inevitably have some falls too, right? She's toppled off the armrest of the couch multiple times, and first thing I do right away is get her checked for subluxation, get her adjusted. But the thing is, when those traumas happen, I know as a parent with just the naked eye, we're just looking at our child thinking, first of all, we want to check them to see, hey, is there any cuts, any bruises, any bleeding? And typically at that point, when we evaluate them or just do a quick look over, we say, oh, thank goodness, they're fine. And that's the first thing I want to address with these traumas, is that on the outside, their bodies may be fine. They may not have any bruising, bleeding, cuts, or soreness. But what is going on in the inside? What trauma did that occur in their spine can be devastating, especially if that effect of the spine can last for weeks or months and go undetected. Those subluxations will begin causing early degeneration of the spine, the ligaments, the muscles, and the tendons in those areas. Things that we want to get addressed and corrected as soon as possible. So keep in mind that, if you got kids of that age, whenever they're having a fall, bring them in, get them checked by a chiropractor, specifically a pediatric chiropractor. We'll go into that a little bit later, but so that's the next stage of development. And then from there, where do they go after that? They begin going into school, right? And what do they do in school? Spend copious amounts of hours sitting at a desk. They're sitting hours kind of in a hunched, flexed over position, looking down at their books or their studies. And it's that forward flexion of the head and oftentimes the rounding of the shoulders from poor posture that causes a lot of spinal trauma and stress in the mid-back and that neck area. So by grade school, ages, grades 1 through 12, I see a lot of issues developing in the thoracic spine and the cervical spine just from sitting at a desk hours a day. I mean, the reality is our bodies are not designed to sit for that long. Our bodies are designed to move and get exercise, hydration for those bones and those muscles and ligaments, not sit still, sit in a desk, don't move your body for sometimes hours on end. I mean, with what's going on in our world right now, and just a lot of kids having at-home school, some of these Zoom calls that kids are on, I mean, they're on these calls for sometimes 30 up to 90 minutes. I've heard that they're being expected to sit in front of a computer and sit still and listen. And I'm not going to go into the effects that can have on them, just mentally and emotionally, but just physically from their body to be forced to sit down for that long. Seeing a lot more trauma in kids these days, especially with the advancements in technology. Because we get into that grade school age, and not only are we talking about stress on their spine from sitting a lot, but also think about this too. I mean, back in my day, it was you have a big textbook, like let's say you got a big 20-30 pound textbook times 3 that you're throwing in their backpack, and they're hunched over and carrying this huge backpack. I mean, that's spinal trauma. But the other reality too is we live in a technologically advanced world now. So what are they doing during their downtime? What are they doing when they go home? Are they on devices? Are they causing a lot more, forward flexion of the neck, a lot more stress on the neck just from, playing gaming devices or being on tablets or even doing schoolwork? So, I could go on and on and on about the causes and effects of spinal trauma on our youth, but the best defense against this is to be properly adjusted and properly assessed by a chiropractor, which is why, one of my favorite posters I have in the office that every parent comments on is, it's easier to grow strong children than to fix and repair broken adults. So let me say that one more time so it sinks in. It's easier to grow strong children than to fix and repair broken adults. Meaning, we could go off on different aspects of that too, but just from a physical, spinal perspective, you don't know how many people I see as adults that wish they would have heard about chiropractic care when they were kids, because most of the damage that we see in a spine begins when we're in our youth and even in our younger toddler years. So just want that, to sink in with you a little bit. I'm always here as a resource to ask questions, pick my brain, even just call the office and let's sit down and talk about what would care look like for your child. Or if you don't personally have children yourself, but you see your friends have children that are going through some health challenges, send them our way to Radix Chiropractic, where we can properly evaluate them for vertebral subluxation and drastically see their life improve. So thank you for today's visit and today's episode. I look forward to our next episode where we're going to go into a little bit more mechanics of chiropractic care for pediatrics.